We all know William Shakespeare, the most famous author of all time, writer of 37 plays, 154 sonnets, several epic poems, and why we are here today. But what if I told you Shakespeare never wrote a single word?
Shakespeare. The Year 9 Conspiracy Files.
Shakespeare is regarded as one of the greatest writers of all time, producing some of the world's wonderful and most amazing pieces of literary art.
Absolutely right, Mr. Ellis, and he's certainly the greatest playwright produced by these fair isles. However, despite this popularity, there are many conspiracies surrounding the playwright, especially regarding his authenticity as an author.
And some of these conspiracies have really gathered weight. A lot of people believe them. They've even informed their own book, their own movie, and of course a television genre as well.
Quite right. I mean, many scholars, there are a few people who are cleverer than you and I, Mr. Ellis, but some of them believe that Shakespeare didn't actually write the plays at all. I'm not quite sure what you believe.
Well, I like to believe those other group of academics who believe that Shakespeare did write all those plays. And while it's a very hotly contested issue, there has actually been no proof to suggest he wasn't who he said he was.
Interesting. So we've got a slight difference in opinion here. I'm not sure if you've seen the film Anonymous, have you, Mr. Ellis?
It's a pantomime of a film.
Is it? Well, that seems to suggest that the person involved portrays Shakespeare as a semi-literate and talented minor actor who is paid by Vere, who we'll come on to in a minute or so, the Count of Oxford, to pass the plays off as his own. And the reason that you do that is because it was actually impossible for the aristocratic members of society at the time to be involved in playwriting at all, especially in Elizabethan and Jacobean England.
But let's look at some of the evidence. The Earl of Oxford, Edward de Vere, died in 1604. That's a fact. We know, pretty much certain of this, that Macbeth, one of Shakespeare's greatest plays, was written after 1605 due to some historical references to the gunpowder plot within the writing.
That's a good point, Mr. Ellis. You're probably right. But the thing is, there's been so many people that have come forward, and so many of their families have come forward to suggest that Shakespeare wasn't who he said he was. We've got to look into this. Shall we have a look at the leading contenders?
Absolutely.
So, the aforementioned Earl of Oxford, Edward de Vere, the baby-faced assassin of English literature. This was the person who is most closely associated with Shakespeare. We knew that they spent time together, actually, and he is therefore being credited with some of Shakespeare's work.
And then we've got Francis Bacon. Now here's where my certainty starts to waver, because Bacon himself was a great writer, and there's been a lot of comparisons drawn between Bacon's work and the style that some of Shakespeare's plays have been written in. So there are question marks.
Interesting.
But the biggest argument in favour of Shakespeare's authorship, I believe, is that there are still records available to us today from his lifetime about his books and his plays being printed. Researchers have found at least 3 references, contemporary references of the time, referring to the printing of Much Ado About Nothing, Henry IV and King Lear.
Some of the actual theories, I'm not sure if you think what you think about this, Mr. Ellis, but they suggest that Shakespeare actually led a double life. In fact, one part of his life was as a writer in London, and the other half was as a wealthy grain merchant in Stratford.
It's all very convincing, actually, when we start looking at some of these theories, isn't it? But they are just theories. There's very little actual information on Shakespeare's life, and therefore we have very little information to base these theories on.
One of the greatest conspiracies is the conspiracy that people have put forward that Shakespeare may have been involved with Sir Walter Raleigh in a plot to kill the Queen of England. These are just some of the conspiracy theories that have been put forward.
Well, maybe Shakespeare did exist, maybe he didn't. But the other question is, how did the son of a glove maker, that's what his father was, from lowly backgrounds end up producing such era-defining works?
It's a great question, and this really is where we need your help, because we just have no way of knowing. There are too many variables. We may never know if Shakespeare was the true author of his own work.
And here's where you come in. You have until the end of this week to produce a piece of work, a piece of research to explore the truth behind the mystery and answer the question once and for all, who was William Shakespeare?
What is fact?
What is fiction?
That is up for you to decide for yourselves. Some of the greatest historical mysteries revolve around this one man.
Or is it men?
That is for you to decide. Now, here comes the serious bit. You will be working in groups for the rest of this lesson and the next lesson, after which you will be expected to present your findings to the class. Now, this is a test of resilience, it's a test of independence, and it's also a test of intelligence. Good luck.